Yaki bood, yaki na bood. In the faraway desert provinces of Sistan and Balochistan on the border of Pakistan, there once lived a little girl, Mah Pishooni, but everyone in the village called her Little Mah. And Little Mah, Little Moon, she was enamored with her teacher. There was once a teacher, Mola Baji, who was a sharp-witted and intelligent woman, and she was fascinated by the gifts that Little Mah would bring for her every day. She made a few inquiries and found that Little Mah's father was a wealthy merchant, a very kind-hearted man, and him she found to her liking. Little Mah was so thrilled when Mola Baji paid her special attention, and she would answer all kinds of questions. Why does dew fall on the plants? Why do the birds sing? Why is the sky so blue? And once in a while, Mola Baji would let Little Mah inside her big black chador. It was like a tent where Little Mah would imagine the stars twinkling in the night and the desert winds telling stories. Her mother never wore a chador, and her mother was always telling her to make herself clean, comb her hair before she went to school, this, that and the other. So one day when Mola Baji suggested to Little Mah that when her mother went down to the cellar, Little Mah should push her into the vat of vinegar, Little Mah did so. And after the 40-day mourning period, when Mola Baji suggested to Little Mah that she should perhaps talk to her father about getting a new mother for Little Mah did so. And soon she had a new mother, Mola Baji. Everything was fine in the first few months. But then Mola Baji had her own child, and something in her heart turned. Her tongue was a whip. And the father, he began to absent himself on his journeys for longer and longer till he was just a ghostly presence in the house. Life was not the same for Little Mah again. Of course, there was no more school. And from dawn to dusk, there was just cleaning, incessant cleaning. Cleaning the stables, cleaning the tandoor, the oven, the ashes, cleaning the clothes. It was exhausting. One day, Mola Baji went down to the cellar, and there her mouth fell open in astonishment because there was a great big fat yellow cow. She was so astonished she didn't even ask why, but a cow was wealth. And Little Mah had one more chore. Take her out to the fields and make sure you don't slacken. Here, there are these 3 bags of cotton wool for you. Spin them into fine thread or else. She didn't need to finish. And so Little Mah, she went to the field while the cow grazed. She picked up some sticks that she had seen older women do and tried to pull some kind of thread, but by the time the sun was in the sky, high up there, it was useless. And then, no! The cow had munched down a whole bag of cotton balls. No, she said, but the cow, it approached her and began to nuzzle her neck. Such love! She began to giggle. And then she started laughing as the cow let out one explosive fart. And soft cotton thread began to emerge from her backside. She was shitting malmal thread. Just then the wind arrived, and the 2 other sacks were blown by the wind into a well, and Little Mah, she felt the cow's voice in her ear. Don't worry, Little Mah. Follow my instructions. Following the cow's instructions, Little Mah went down that dark well till the darkness was so thick she could have cut it with a knife. In just that moment, she heard the soft gurgling of a stream not too far. And she splashed down onto the stream and walked where the stream would lead her, and there was a forest of acacia and chinar trees and an old raggedy hut with an old woman sitting there scratching and muttering at herself in irritation. Now, as the cow had instructed, Little Mah saw a comb next to the woman and she picked it up. "Granny," she said, "let me." And she began to gently comb the old woman's knots out of her hair. Cockroaches, earworms, crickets, frogs jumped out of that tangle. But Little Mah, she continued, "There, Granny," she said, "there, there, there." And when it was finally done, the old woman's hair gleamed like moonlight. "Now you sit there, Granny. I'm going to do some cleaning up." And Little Mah did what she was used to. She cleaned up the whole house and she found a pile of jewels, rubies and diamonds and pearls, but the greatest treasure, her 2 bags of cotton balls. She picked them up. "Thank you, Granny." "Ah, Little Mah," said the Granny, "where are you going in such a rush? Rest a while. Go to the edge of my garden and there you will see a frothing river as silver as my hair. Bathe in it. Nourish yourself, child." Little Mah slid into those waters and she could feel the dirt cleansed and her skin felt so soft. She came out and looked at her reflection and she had a moon on her forehead. She was moonlit forehead, Mah Pishooni, and on her chin was a little twinkling star. But Little Mah remembered her stepmother. She tied a chador around her face, and that evening when Mullah Baji looked at Little Mah up and down, "Mother, you said I'm an adult now. Look, I can spin." And she showed her the threads. Mullah Baji couldn't understand it. No matter how much Little Mah worked all day with the cow, and at night she cleaned everything by the dark. There was no fire, there was no light, but she seemed to get everything done. And she was growing and she was glowing. One night, Mullah Baji watched Mah Pishooni and she saw a light in the stables. "The little thief," she said, "she's stolen some light." And she barged in on Mah Pishooni. Her mouth dropped in astonishment. The stable was bathed in moonlight and the light came from Mah Pishooni's forehead, the crescent moon. "How did this happen? Where did you get this? What have you been doing?" She thrashed the girl and the story spilt out. That cow, anger consumed Mullah Baji. It withered her, it sickened her from inside. She couldn't bear to see her daughter looking so ordinary next to Mah, who was glowing, ethereal. And finally Mullah Baji took to her bed, sick. She couldn't get up, her voice was frail, and her husband asked her, "My dear wife, what can I do? What do you need?" The meat of that cow," she said, "that meat." Mah Pishooni had not cried as much in all her life. She begged her father, "Give her any meat, just why must it be this cow?" "I'm sorry, my daughter. I'm so sorry, but I can't bear to see another daughter become motherless." And that night, Mah Pishooni slept with her arms around the great big cow mother. She felt the cow whisper into her ear, "Do not eat my meat, Mah Pishooni, do not eat my meat. Bury my bones, Mah Pishooni, bury my bones." And that's what she did the next day. She buried those bones deep into the ground. She sang over it, and for the first time, she felt the loss of a mother. And time passed. There was going to be a wedding in the village. And the prince himself was going to come to attend the wedding. The entire village was agog with excitement. You're not coming. Maybe, if you can fill this vase with your tears and, oh, look at those beans and wheat and sand all mixed up. Maybe you can clean that and then come to the wedding. And with that, Mulabaji was gone with her daughter. By now, Mah Pishooni was just so exhausted. She didn't even have any tears to fill half a vase. She just sat there. Mah Pishooni, Mah Pishooni, Mah Pishooni. She saw the chickens come out of their coop and start separating the beans and the grains, and the oldest chicken stood there, fluffing herself in front of Ma, saying, "You shall go to the ball. Go to the stable and you will find what you will find. Oh, as far as the vase is concerned, just fill it with some water and salt and that should be done. But remember to be back by midnight. Don't ask me why, just be back." Mah Pishooni had not laughed or sung for a long time, and at that wedding, when she entered with her velvet red dress and golden slippers, she shone brighter than any full moon. And when she left at midnight, she left a prince longing to meet her one more time, and one golden slipper. And the next morning, the soldiers wandered the village. They came to Mulabaji's house, and the cock started crowing. "Kukkurukuru, kukkurukuru, Mah Pishooni thane thanur, Mah Pishooni is in the oven." Oh, the cocks have gone mad today. "But madam, what is in that oven?" asked the commander. And that was that. When they opened the oven, there was a young girl covered in ash and dung, but the moon on her forehead shining, and the slipper fitted perfectly. There was a grand wedding. The prince loved his new bride so much. But she always looked at him with sad eyes, and she said, I can't begin our married life until I have got my mother's blessing. I must do this alone." And the prince agreed. She found herself in the field with the grave of the cow, and she began to moisturize it with her tears. As her tears fell on that grave, the ground shuddered. And Mah Pishooni saw the great big cow mother standing in front of her. "Oh, you're back. Ah, my child, my child. Look at you. You have grown. You have passed tests that even you're not aware of. But you have one more test. Take the dagger that the prince gave you and separate my flesh from my skin." "No, shh. You can do this." As Mah Pishooni began her tasks, the cow mother lay down on the field, and a great sandstorm with howling winds began to circle them, veiling what was happening inside. And Mah Pishooni, she felt nothing. She continued with her task decisively, carefully, and oh, so tenderly. till finally the knife and the hand and the wind and her love, they were all one. She only felt the rising and falling of the breath of the cow. And finally, when that breath stilled, the wind died down and the desert sand covered the body. Mah Pishooni began to blow away the sand. And there arose her long dead mother, rose in front of her, and Mah Pishooni ran into the embrace, that warm tent of an embrace. And as she breathed the long forgotten smells of motherhood, Mah Pishooni knew she was finally home.